Unfinished Portrait is an emotionally charged audiobook that offers a deep dive into the complexities of relationships, personal growth, and emotional turmoil. The story follows Celia, a woman who grapples with the difficult balance between her desires and the demands of those around her. As Celia navigates the emotional intricacies of her marriage with Dermot, a man who seems detached from her emotional needs, she finds herself questioning the nature of love, companionship, and personal fulfillment. Through evocative storytelling, the audiobook explores Celia's inner world as she contemplates her past, the choices that have shaped her, and the sacrifices she has made for love and family. With themes of longing, self-discovery, and the complexities of human connection, Unfinished Portrait offers listeners a poignant and thought-provoking journey. Whether it's the delicate nuances of her relationship with Dermot or the profound loss of her mother, Celia's story resonates with anyone who has experienced the challenges of maintaining one's identity while being pulled by love and duty. Join us in this reflective exploration of love, loyalty, and the quiet struggle for personal fulfillment. Listen now to discover a journey that will stay with you long after the final words are spoken. Chapter 13, Companionship and Portrait. There were several things Celia found that Dermot didn't like about her. Any sign of helplessness annoyed him. "Why do you want me to do things for you when you can perfectly well do them for yourself?" "Oh, Dermot, but it's so nice having you do them for me." "Nonsense. You'd get worse and worse if I'd let you." "I expect I should," said Celia sadly. "It isn't as though you can't do all these things perfectly. You're perfectly sensible and intelligent and capable." "I expect," said Celia, "that it goes with slightly sloping Victorian shoulders. You want, automatically, to cling, like ivy." "Well," said Dermot good-humoredly, "you can't cling to me. I'm not going to let you." "Do you mind very much, Dermot, my being dreamy and fancying things and imagining things that might happen and what I should do if they did? Of course I don't mind, if it amuses you." Dermot was always fair. He was independent himself, and he respected independence in other people. He had, presumably, his own ideas about things, but he never put them into words or wanted to share them with anyone else. The trouble was that Celia wanted to share everything. When the almond tree in the court below came into flower, it gave her a queer, ecstatic feeling just under her heart, and she longed to put her hand into Dermot's and drag him to the window and make him feel the same. But Dermot hated having his hand taken. He hated being touched at all, unless he was in a recognizably amorous mood. When Celia burnt her hand on the stove, and immediately after pinched a finger in the kitchen window, she longed to go and put her head on Dermot's shoulder and be comforted, but felt that that sort of thing would annoy Dermot, and she was perfectly right. He disliked being touched, or leaned on for comfort, or asked to enter into other people's emotion. So Celia fought heroically against her passion for sharing, her weakness for caresses, her longing for reassurance. She told herself that she was babyish and foolish. She loved Dermot, and Dermot loved her. He loved her, probably more deeply than she loved him, since he needed less expression of love to satisfy him. She had passion and comradeship from him. It was unreasonable to expect affection as well. Granny would have known better. The men were not like that. At weekends, Dermot and Celia went into the country together. They took sandwiches with them, and then went by rail or bus to a chosen spot, and then walked across country and came home by another train or bus. All the week, Celia looked forward to the weekends. Dermot came back from the city every day thoroughly tired, sometimes with a headache, sometimes with indigestion. After dinner, he liked to sit and read. Sometimes he told Celia of incidents that had happened during the day, but on the whole, he preferred not to talk. He usually had some technical book that he wanted to read uninterrupted. But at weekends, Celia got her comrade back. They walked through woods and made ridiculous jokes, and sometimes, going uphill, Celia would say, "I am very fond of you, Dermot," and put her hand through his arm. This was because Dermot raced up hills and Celia got out of breath. Dermot didn't mind his arm being held if it was only a joke and really to help her up the hill. One day, Dermot suggested that they should play golf. He was very bad, he said, but he could play a little. Celia got out her clubs and cleaned the rust off them, and she thought of Peter Maitland. Dear Peter, dear, dear Peter. That warm affection she felt for Peter would stay with her to the end of her life. Peter was part of things. They found an obscure golf links where the green fees were not too high. It was fun to play golf again. She was frightfully rusty. But then Dermot wasn't much good either. He hit terrific long shots, but they were pulled or sliced wildly. It was great fun playing together. It didn't just remain fun, though. Dermot, in games as in work, was efficient and painstaking. He bought a book and studied it deeply. He practiced swings at home and bought some cork balls to practice with. The next weekend, they didn't play around. Dermot did nothing but practice shots. He made Celia do the same. Dermot began to live for golf. Celia tried to live for golf too, but not with much success. Dermot's game improved by leaps and bounds. Celia's stayed much the same. She wished, passionately, that Dermot was a little more like Peter Maitland. Yet she had fallen in love with Dermot, attracted by precisely those qualities which differentiated him from Peter. One day, Dermot came in and said, "Look here, I'm going down to Dalton Heath with Andrews next Sunday. Is that all right?" Celia said, of course it was all right. Dermot came back enthusiastic. Golf was wonderful. Played on a first-rate course. Celia must come down next week and see Dalton Heath. Women couldn't play at the weekends, but she could walk round with him. They went once or twice more to their little cheap course, but Dermot took no further pleasure in it. He said that that sort of place was no good to him. A month later, he told Celia that he was going to join Dalton Heath. "I know it's expensive, but, after all, I can economize in other ways. Golf is the only recreation I've got, and it's going to make all the difference to me. Both Andrews and Weston belong there." Celia said slowly, "What about me?" "It wouldn't be any good, your belonging. Women can't play at weekends, and I don't suppose you'd care to go down by yourself in the week. I mean, what am I going to do at the weekends? You'll be playing with Andrews and people? Well, it would be rather silly to join a golf club and not use it." "Yes, but we've always spent the weekends together, you and I." "Oh, I see. Well, you can get someone to go about with. Can't you? I mean, you've got lots of friends of your own." "No, I haven't. Not now. The few friends I had who lived in London have all married and gone away." "Well, There's Doris Andrews and Mrs. Weston and people. Those aren't exactly my friends. They're your friends' wives. It isn't quite the same thing. Besides, that isn't it at all. You don't understand. I like being with you. I like doing things with you. I liked our walks and our sandwiches and playing golf together and all the fun. You're tired all the week, and I don't worry you or bother you to do things in the evening, but I looked forward to the weekends. I love them. Oh, Dermot, I like being with you, and now we shall never do anything together anymore. She wished her voice wouldn't tremble. She wished she could keep the tears back from her eyes. Was she being dreadfully unreasonable? Would Dermot be cross? Was she being selfish? She was clinging. Yes, undoubtedly she was clinging. Ivy again. Dermot was trying hard to be patient and reasonable. You know, Celia, I don't think that's quite fair. I never interfere with what you want to do. But I don't want to do things. Well, I shouldn't mind if you did. If any weekend you'd said that you wanted to go off with Doris Andrews or some old friend of yours, I should have been quite happy. I'd have hunted up somebody and gone off somewhere else. After all, when we married, we did agree that each side should be free and do just what they wanted to do. We didn't agree or talk about anything of the kind, said Celia. We just loved each other and wanted to marry each other and thought it would be perfectly heavenly always to be together. Well, so it is. It isn't that I don't love you. I love you just as much as ever. But a man likes doing things with other men, and he needs exercise. If I was wanting to go off with other women, well, then you might have something to complain about. But I never want to be bothered with any other woman but you. I hate women. I just want to play a decent game of golf with another man. I do think you're rather unreasonable about it. Yes. Probably she was being unreasonable. What Dermot wanted to do was so innocent, so natural. She felt ashamed. But he didn't realize how terribly she was going to miss those weekends together. She didn't only want Dermot in her bed at night. She loved Dermot as playfellow even better than Dermot as lover. Was it true what she had so often heard women say, that men only wanted women as bedfellows and housekeepers? Was that the whole tragedy of marriage? That women wanted to be companions, and that men were bored by it? She said something of the kind. Dermot, as always, was honest. I think, Celia, that is true. Women always want to do things with men, and a man would always rather have another man. Well, she had got it flat. Dermot was right, and she was wrong. She had been unreasonable. She said so, and his face cleared. You are so sweet, Celia, and I expect you'll really enjoy it better in the end. I mean, you'll find people to go about with who enjoy talking about things and feelings. I know I'm rather bad at all that kind of thing, and we'll be just as happy. In fact, I shall probably only play golf either Saturday or Sunday. The other day we'll go out together as we did before.
Mayo.
The next Saturday he went off, radiant. On Sunday, he suggested of his own accord that he and she should go for a ramble. They did, but it was not the same. Dermot was perfectly sweet, but she knew that his heart was at Dalton Heath. Weston had asked him to play, but he had refused. He was full of conscious pride in his sacrifice. The next weekend, Celia urged him to play golf both days, and he went off happily. Celia thought, I must learn to play by myself again, or else I must find some friends. She had scorned domestic women. She had been proud of her companionship with Dermot. Those domestic women, absorbed in their children, their servants, their house running, relieved when Tom or Dick or Fred went off to play golf at the weekend because there was no mess about the house. It makes it so much easier for the servants. My dear, men were necessary as breadwinners, but they were an inconvenience in the house. Perhaps, after all, domesticity paid best. It looked like it. Chapter 14. Ivy. How lovely to be at home. Celia lay full length on the green grass. It felt deliciously warm and alive. The beech tree rustled overhead. Green, green. All the world was green. Trailing a wooden horse behind her, Judy came toiling up the slope of the lawn. Judy was adorable with her firm legs, her rosy cheeks and blue eyes, her thickly curling chestnut brown hair. Judy was her own little girl, just as she had been her mother's little girl. Only, of course, Judy was quite different. Judy didn't want to have stories told to her, which was a pity, because Celia could think of heaps of stories without any effort at all. And, anyway, Judy didn't like fairy stories. Judy wasn't any good at make-believe. When Celia told Judy how she herself had pretended that the lawn was a sea and her hoop a river horse, Judy had merely stared and said, "But it's grass, and you bowl a hoop. You can't ride it." It was so obvious that she thought Celia must have been a rather silly little girl that Celia felt quite dashed. First, Dermot had found out that she was silly, and now Judy. Although only 4 years old, Judy was full of common sense, and common sense, Celia found, can be often very depressing. Moreover, Judy's common sense had a bad effect upon Celia. She made efforts to appear sensible in Judy's eyes, clear blue appraising eyes, with the result that she often made herself out sillier than she was. Judy was a complete puzzle to her mother. All the things that Celia had loved doing as a child bored Judy. Judy could not play for 3 minutes in the garden by herself. She would come marching into the house declaring that there was nothing to do. Judy liked doing real things. She was never bored in the flat at home. She polished tables with a duster, assisted in bed making, and helped her father to clean his golf clubs. Dermot and Judy had suddenly become friends. A thoroughly satisfying communion had grown up between them. Though still deploring Judy's well-covered frame, Dermot could not but be charmed by her evident delight in his company. They talked to each other seriously, like grown-up people. When Dermot gave Judy a club to clean, he expected her to do it properly. When Judy said, "Isn't that nice about anything? A house she had built of bricks, or a ball she had made of wool, or a spoon she had cleaned?" Dermot never said it was unless he thought so. He would point out errors or faulty construction. "You'll discourage her," Celia would say. But Judy was not in the least discouraged, and her feelings were never hurt. She liked her father better than her mother because her father was more difficult to please. She liked doing things that were difficult. Dermot was rough. When he and Judy romped together, Judy nearly always got damaged. Games with Dermot always ended in a bump or a scratch or a pinched finger. Judy didn't care. Celia's gentler games seemed to her tame. Only when she was ill did she prefer her mother to her father. "Don't go away, Mummy, don't go away. Stay with me. Don't let Daddy come. I don't want Daddy." Dermot was quite satisfied for his presence not to be desired. He didn't like ill people. Anybody ill or unhappy embarrassed him. Judy was like Dermot about being touched. She hated to be kissed or picked up. One goodnight kiss from her mother she bore, but nothing more. Her father never kissed her. When they said good night, they grinned at each other. Judy and her grandmother got on very well together. Miriam was delighted with the child's spirit and intelligence. She's extraordinarily quick. Celia. She takes a thing in at once. Miriam's old love of teaching revived. She taught Judy her letters and small words. Both grandmother and grandchild enjoyed the lessons. Sometimes Miriam would say to Celia, "But she's not you, my precious." It was as though she were excusing herself for her interest in youth. Miriam loved youth. She had the teacher's joy and an awakening mind. Judy was an abiding excitement and interest to her, but her heart was all Celia's. The love between them was stronger than ever. When Celia arrived, she would find her mother looking a tiny old woman, gray, faded. But in a day or two she would revive. The color would come back to her cheeks, the sparkle to her eyes. "I've got my girl back," she would say happily. She always asked Dermot down too, but she was always delighted when he didn't come. She wanted Celia to herself, and Celia loved the feeling of stepping back into her old life, to feel that happy tide of reassurance sweeping over her, the feeling of being loved, of being adequate. For her mother, she was perfect. Her mother didn't want her to be different. She could just be herself. It was so restful to be yourself. And then she could let herself go, in tenderness, in saying things. She could say, "I am so happy," without having to catch back the words at Dermot's frown. Dermot hated you to say what you were feeling. He felt it, somehow, to be indecent. At home, Celia could be as indecent as she liked. She could realize better at home how happy she was with Dermot and how much she loved him and Judy. And after an orgy of loving and saying all the things that came into her head, she could go back and be a sensible, independent person, such as was approved of by Dermot. Oh, dear home, and the beech tree, and the grass growing against her cheek. She thought dreamily, "It's alive, it's a great green beast. The whole earth is a great green beast. It's kind and warm and alive. I'm so happy, I'm so happy. I've got everything I want in the world." Dermot drifted happily in and out of her thoughts. He was a kind of motif in her melody of life. Sometimes she missed him terribly. She said to Judy one day, "Do you miss Daddy?" "No," said Judy, "but you'd like him to be here." "Yes, I suppose so." "Aren't you sure? You're so fond of Daddy." "Of course I am, but he's in London." That settled it for Judy. When Celia got back, Dermot was very pleased to see her. They had a happy, lover-like evening. Celia murmured, "I've missed you a lot. Have you missed me?" "Well, I haven't thought about it." "You mean you haven't thought about me?" "No. What would be the good? Thinking of you wouldn't bring you here." That, of course, was quite true and very sensible. "But you're pleased now that I'm here." His answer satisfied her, but later, when he was asleep and she lay awake, dreamily happy, she thought, "It's awful, but I wish that Dermot could sometimes be a tiny bit dishonest. If he could have said, 'I missed you terribly, darling,' how comforting and warming it would have been. And it really wouldn't have mattered if it had been true or not. No, Dermot was Dermot. Her funny, devastatingly truthful Dermot. Judy was just like him. It was wiser, perhaps, not to ask them questions if you didn't fancy the truth for an answer. She thought drowsily, I wonder if I shall get jealous of Judy some day. She and Dermot understand each other so much better than he and I do. Judy, she had fancied, was sometimes jealous of her. She liked her father's attention to be entirely focused on herself. Celia thought, how queer. Dermot was so jealous of her before she was born, and even when she was a tiny baby. It's funny the way things turn out the opposite way from what you expect. Darling Judy, darling Dermot, so alike, so funny, and so sweet. And hers, no, not hers, she was theirs. One liked it better that way. It felt warmer, more comfortable. She belonged to them. Celia invented a new game. It was really, she thought, a new phase of the girls. The girls themselves were moribund. Celia tried to resurrect them, gave them babies and stately homes and parks and interesting careers. But it was all no good. The girls refused to come to life again. Celia invented a new person. Her name was Hazel. Celia followed her career from childhood upwards with great interest. Hazel was an unhappy child, a poor relation. She acquired a sinister reputation with nursemaids by a habit of chanting, something's going to happen, something's going to happen. And as something usually did happen, even if it was only a nursery maid's pricked finger, Hazel found herself established as a kind of witch's familiar. She grew up with the knowledge of how easy it was to impose on the credulous. Celia followed her with great interest into a world of spiritualism, fortune-telling, seances, and so on. Hazel ended up at a fortune-telling establishment in Bond Street, where she acquired a great reputation, aided by a little coterie of impoverished society spies. Then she fell in love with a young Welsh naval officer, and there were scenes on Welsh villages. And slowly it began to be apparent to everyone but Hazel herself that side by side with her fraudulent practices went a genuine gift. At last, Hazel herself found it out and was terrified. But the more she tried to cheat, the more her uncanny guesses came right. The power had got hold of her and wouldn't let her go. Owen, the young man, was more nebulous, but in the end he proved himself to be a plausible rotter. Whenever Celia had a little leisure, or when she was wheeling Judy to the park, the story went on in her mind. It occurred to her one day that she might write it down. She might, in fact, make a book of it. She bought 6-penny exercise books and a lot of pencils because she was careless about pencils and started. It wasn't quite so easy when it came to writing down. Her mind had always gone on about 6 paragraphs farther than the one she was writing down. And then by the time she got to that, the exact wording had gone out of her head. But still, she made progress. It wasn't quite the story she had had in her head, but it was something that read recognizably like a book. It had chapters and all that. She bought 6 more exercise books. She didn't tell Dermot about it for some time, not, in fact, till she had successfully wrestled with an account of a Welsh revivalist meeting at which Hazel had testified. That particular chapter had gone much better than Celia hoped. She felt so flushed by victory that she wanted to tell somebody. Dermot, she said, do you think I could write a book? Dermot said cheerfully, I think that's an excellent idea. I should, if I were you. Well, As a matter of fact, I have, that is, I've begun. I'm halfway through. Good, said Dermot. He had put down a book on economics when Celia spoke. Now he picked it up again. It's about a girl who's a medium, but doesn't know she is. And she gets tangled up in a bogus fortune-telling place, and she cheats at seances. And then she falls in love with a young man in Wales, and she goes to Wales and queer things happen. I suppose there's some kind of story. Of course there is. I'm saying it badly. That's all. Do you know anything about mediums or seances or things? No, said Celia, rather stricken. Well, isn't it a bit risky to write about them? Then, and you've never been to Wales, have you? No. Well, hadn't you better write about something you do know about London or your part of the country? It seems to me you're simply making difficulties for yourself. Celia felt abashed. As usual, Dermot was right. She had behaved like a simpleton. Why on earth choose the subjects she knew nothing about, that revivalist meeting? 2. She had never been to a revivalist meeting. Why on earth try to describe one all the same? She couldn't give up Hazel and Owen now. They were there. No. But something must be done about them. For the next month, Celia read every conceivable work she could find on spiritualism. Seances, mediumistic powers, and fraudulent practices. Then, slowly and laboriously, she rewrote all the first part of the book. She did not enjoy her task. All the sentences seemed to run haltingly, and she even got into the most amazingly complicated grammatical tangles for no apparent reason. That summer, Dermot very obligingly agreed to go to Wales for his fortnight's holiday. Celia could then look about for local color. They duly carried out the project, but Celia found local color extremely elusive. She took round a little notebook with her, so as to be able to put down anything that struck her. But she was by nature remarkably unobservant, and days passed when it seemed quite impossible to put down anything at all. She had an awful temptation to abandon Wales and to turn Owen into a Scotsman called Hector, who lived in the Highlands. But then Dermot pointed out to her that the same difficulty would arise. She knew nothing about the Highlands either. In despair, Celia abandoned the whole thing. It just wouldn't go anymore. Besides, she was already playing in her mind with a family of fishing folk on the Cornish coast. Amos Poleridge was already quite well known to her. She didn't tell Dermot because she felt guilty, realizing perfectly well that she knew nothing about fishermen or the sea. It would be useless writing it down, but it was fun to think about. There would be an old grandmother, too, very toothless and rather sinister. And some time or other, she would finish the Hazel book. Owen could perfectly well be a rotten young stockbroker in London. Only, or so it seemed to her, Owen didn't want to be that. He sulked and became so vague that he really didn't exist at all. Celia had become quite used to being poor and living carefully. Dermot expected to make money someday. In fact, he was quite sure of it. Celia never expected to be rich. She was quite content to remain as they were, but hoped it wouldn't be too much of a disappointment to Dermot. What neither of them expected was a real financial calamity. But the boom after the war was over. It was followed by the slump. Dermot's firm went into liquidation, and he was out of a job. They had £50 a year of Dermot's and 100 pounds a year of Celia's. They had 200 pounds saved in war loan, and there was the shelter of Miriam's house for Celia and Judy. It was a bad time. It affected Celia principally through Dermot. Dermot took misfortune, especially undeserved misfortune, for he had worked well such as this, hard. It made him bitter and bad-tempered. Celia dismissed Kate and Denman and proposed to run the flat by herself until such times as Dermot got another job. Denman, however, refused to be dismissed. Fiercely and angrily, she said, "I'm stopping. It's no good arguing. I'll wait for my wages. I'm not going to leave my little love now." So Denman remained. She and Celia did turn and turn about with housework, cooking, and Judy. One morning Celia took Judy to the park, and Denman cooked and cleaned. The next morning Denman went, and Celia remained. Celia found a queer enjoyment in this. She liked to be busy. In the evenings, she found time to go on with Hazel. She finished the book painstakingly, consulting her Welsh notes, and sent it to a publisher. It might bring in something. It was, however, promptly returned, and Celia tossed it into a drawer and did not try again. Celia's chief difficulty in life was Dermot. Dermot was utterly unreasonable. He was so sensitive to failure that he was quite unbearable to live with. If Celia was cheerful, he told her she might show a little more appreciation of his difficulties. If she was silent, he said she might try to brighten him up. Celia felt desperately that if only Dermot would help, they might make a kind of picnic of it all. Surely to laugh at trouble was the best way of meeting it. But Dermot couldn't laugh. His pride was involved. However unkind and unreasonable he was, Celia did not feel hurt as she had done over the party episode. She understood that he was suffering, and suffering on her account more than his own. Sometimes he came near to expressing himself. "Why don't you go away? You and Judy take her to your mother's. I'm no good just now. I know I'm not fit to live with. I told you once before, I'm no good in trouble. I can't stand trouble." But Celia would not leave him. She wished she could make it easier for him, but there seemed nothing she could do. And as day followed day, and Dermot was unsuccessful in finding a job, his mood grew blacker and blacker. Then, at last, when Celia felt her courage failing her entirely, and she had almost decided to go to Miriam as Dermot so constantly suggested she should, the tide turned. Dermot came into the flat one afternoon, a changed man. He looked his young, boyish self again. His dark blue eyes danced and sparkled. "Celia, it's splendid. You remember Tommy Forbes? I looked him up, just on chance, and he jumped at me. Was just looking for a man like me. 800 a year to start with, and in a year or two, I may be making anything up to 1,500 or 2,000. Let's go out somewhere and celebrate." What a happy evening, Dermot, so different, so childlike in his zest and excitement. He insisted on buying Celia a new frock. "You look lovely in that hyacinth blue. I still love you frightfully." Celia. Lovers? Yes. They were still lovers, that night, lying awake. Celia thought, I hope things will always go well for Dermot. He minds so much when they don't." "Mummy," said Judy suddenly the next morning, "what's a fair-weather friend? Nurse says her friend in Peckham is one." "It means somebody who is nice to you when everything is all right, but doesn't stand by you in trouble. "Oh," said Judy. "I see. Like Daddy." "No, Judy, of course not. Daddy is unhappy and not very gay when he is worried. But if you or I were ill or unhappy, Daddy would do anything for us. He's the most loyal person in the world." Judy looked thoughtfully at her mother and said, "I don't like people who are ill. They go to bed and can't play. Margaret got something in her eye yesterday in the park. She had to stop running and sit down. She wanted me to sit with her, but I wouldn't. Judy, that was very unkind." "No, it wasn't. I don't like sitting down. I like running about. But if you had something in your eye, you would like someone to sit and talk to you, not go off and leave you. I wouldn't mind. And anyway, I hadn't got something in my eye." It was Margaret. Chapter 15. Prosperity. Dermot was prosperous. He was making nearly $2,000 a year. Celia and he had a lovely time. They both agreed that they ought to save, but they also agreed that they wouldn't start just yet. The first thing they bought was a second-hand car. Then Celia longed to live in the country. It would be so much nicer for Judy. And she herself hated London, always before. Dermot had negatived the idea on the score of expense, railway fares for him, food being cheaper in town, etc. But now he admitted that he liked the idea. They would find a cottage not too far from Dalton Heath. They eventually settled in the lodge of a big estate that was being cut up for building. Dalton Heath Golf Course was 10 miles away. They also bought a dog, an adorable Sealyham called Aubrey. Denman refused to accompany them to the country, having been angelic all through the bad times. She became a positive fiend with the advent of prosperity. She was rude to Celia, went about tossing her head in the air, and finally gave notice saying that as some she knew were getting stuck up, it was time she made a change. They moved in spring, and the most exciting thing to Celia was the lilacs. There were hundreds of lilacs, all shades of mauve and purple, wandering out into the garden in the early morning with Aubrey at her heels. Celia felt that life had become almost perfect. No more dirt and dust and fog. This was home. Celia adored the country life and the long rambling walks with Aubrey. There was a small school nearby where Judy went in the mornings. Judy took to school as a duck takes to water. She was very shy with individuals, but completely unabashed by large numbers. "Can I go to a really big school one day, Mummy, where there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of girls? What's the biggest school in England?" Celia had one passage of arms with Dermot over their little home. One of the front top rooms was to be their bedroom. Dermot wanted the other for his dressing room. Celia insisted that it should be Judy's nursery. Dermot was annoyed. "I suppose you'll have it your own way. I shall be the only person in the house who is never to have a bit of sun in his room. Judy ought to have a sunny room." "Nonsense! She's out all day. That room at the back is quite large, plenty of room for her to run about in." "There's no sun in it. I don't see why sun for Judy is more important than sun for me." But Celia, for once, stood firm. She wanted badly to give Dermot his sunny room, but she didn't. In the end, Dermot was perfectly good-natured about his defeat. He adopted it as a grievance, but quite good-temperedly, and pretended to be a downtrodden husband and father. They had a good many neighbors near them, most of them with children. Everyone was friendly. The only thing that made a difficulty was Dermot's refusal to go out to dinner. Look here, Celia, I come down from London tired out, and you want me to dress up and go out and not get home and to bed till past midnight. I simply can't do it. Not every night, of course. But I don't see that one night a week would matter. Well, I don't want to. You go, if you like. I can't go alone. People don't ask you to dinner except in pairs. And it sounds so odd for me to say that you never go out at night. Because, after all, you're quite young. I'm sure you could manage to go without me. But that wasn't so easy. In the country, as Celia said, people were asked in couples or not at all. Still, she saw the justice of what Dermot said. He was earning the money he ought to have the say in their joint life. So she refused the invitations. And they sat at home, Dermot reading books on financial subjects, and Celia sometimes sewing, sometimes sitting with her hands clasped, thinking about her family of Cornish fishermen. Celia wanted to have another child. Dermot didn't. You always said there was no room in London, said Celia, and of course we were very poor. But we've got enough now, and there's heaps of room, and two wouldn't be any more trouble than one. Well, we don't want one just now. All the fuss and bother and crying and bottles all over again. I believe you'll always say that. No, I shan't. I'd like to have 2 more children, but not now. There's heaps of time. We're quite young still. It will be a sort of adventure for when we're getting bored with things. Let's just enjoy ourselves now. You don't want to begin being sick again. He paused. I tell you what, I did look at today. Oh, Dermot, a car. This second-hand little beast is pretty rotten. Davis put me onto this. It's a sports model, only done 8,000 miles. Celia thought, how I love him. He's such a boy, so eager. And he's worked so hard. Why shouldn't he have the things he likes? We'll have another baby someday. In the meantime, let him have his car. After all, I care more for him than for any baby in the world. It puzzled Celia that Dermot never wanted any of his old friends to stay. But you used to be so fond of Andrews. Yes, but we've grown out of touch with each other. We never meet nowadays. One changes. And Jim Lucas. You and he used to be inseparable when we were engaged. Oh, I can't be bothered with any of the old army crowd. One day Celia had a letter from Ellie Maitland, Ellie Peterson, as she now was. Dermot, my old friend Ellie Peterson is home from India. I was her bridesmaid. Shall I ask her and her husband down for the weekend? Yes, of course, if you like. Does he play golf? I don't know. Rather a bore if he doesn't. However, it won't really matter. You won't want me to stay at home and entertain them, will you? Couldn't we play tennis? There were a number of courts for the use of residents on the estate. Ellie used to be awfully keen on tennis. And Tom plays. I know. He used to be good. Look here, Celia. I simply can't play tennis. It absolutely ruins my game. And there's the Dalton Heath Cup in 3 weeks' time. Does nothing matter but golf. It makes it so difficult. Don't you think, Celia, that it's ever so much better if everyone does as they like? I like golf, you like tennis. You have your friends down and do as you like with them. You know I never interfere with anything you want to do. That was true. It all sounded perfectly all right. But somehow it made things difficult in practice. When you were married, Celia reflected, you were somehow so tied up with your husband. Nobody considered you as a separate unity. It would be all right if it were only Ellie coming down. But surely Dermot ought to do something about Ellie's husband. After all, when Davis, with whom Dermot played nearly every weekend, and his wife came to stay, she, Celia, had to entertain Mrs. Davis all day. Mrs. Davis was nice, but dull. She just sat about and had to be talked to. But she didn't say these things to Dermot because she knew he hated to be argued with. She asked the Petersons down and hoped for the best. Ellie had changed very little. She and Celia enjoyed talking over old times. Tom was a little quiet. He had gone a little gray. He seemed a nice little man, Celia thought. He had always seemed a little absent-minded, but very pleasant. Dermot behaved angelically. He explained that he was obliged to play golf on Saturday. Ellie's husband didn't play, but he devoted Sunday to entertaining his guests and took them on the river, a form of spending an afternoon which Celia knew he hated. When they had gone, he said to her, "Now then, have I been noble or have I not?" Noble was one of Dermot's words. It always made Celia laugh. You've been an angel. Well, don't make me do it again for a long time, will you? Celia didn't. She rather wanted to invite another friend and her husband down 2 weeks later. But she knew the man wasn't a golfer, and she didn't want Dermot to have to make a sacrifice a second time. It was so difficult, thought Celia, living with a person who was sacrificing himself. Dermot was rather trying as a martyr. He was much better to live with when he was enjoying himself. And, anyway, he was unsympathetic about old friends. Old friends, in Dermot's opinion, were usually a bore. Judy was obviously in sympathy with her father over this. For a few days later, when Celia mentioned her friend Margaret, Judy merely stared. "Who's Margaret? Don't you remember Margaret? You used to play with her in the park in London." "No, I didn't. I never played with a Margaret anywhere." "Judy, you must remember. It's only a year ago." But Judy couldn't remember any Margaret at all. She couldn't remember anyone she had played with in London. "I only know the girls at school," said Judy comfortably. Something rather exciting happened. It began by Celia being rung up and asked to take someone's place at a dinner party at the last minute. "I know you won't mind." Dear, Celia didn't mind. She was delighted. She enjoyed the evening frightfully. She wasn't shy. She found it easy to talk. There was no need to watch whether she were being silly or not. Dermot's critical eyes were not upon her. She felt as though she had been suddenly wafted back to girlhood. The man on her right had traveled a lot in the East. Above everything in the world, Celia longed to travel. She felt sometimes that if the chance were to be given her, she would leave Dermot and Judy and Aubrey and everything and dash off into the blue to wander. The man at her side spoke of Baghdad, of Kashmir, of Ispahan and Tehran and Shiraz, such lovely words, nice to say them even without any meaning attached. He told her, too, of wandering in Baluchistan, where few travelers had been. The man on her left was an elderly, kindly person. He liked the bright young creature at his side, who turned to him at last with a rapturous face still full of the glamour of far lands. He had something to do with books. She gathered, and she told him, laughing a good deal, about her one unlucky venture. He said he'd like to see her manuscript. Celia told him that it was very bad. All the same, I'd like to see it. Will you show it to me? Yes, if you like, but you'll be disappointed. He thought that probably he would. She didn't look like a writer, this young creature with her Scandinavian fairness. But just because she attracted him, it would interest him to see what she had written. Celia came home at 1 a.m. to find Dermot happily asleep. She was so excited that she woke him up. Dermot, I've had such a lovely evening. Oh, I have enjoyed myself. There was a man there who told me all about Persia and Baluchistan. And there was a nice publisher man. And they made me sing after dinner. I sang awfully badly, but they didn't seem to mind. And then we went out in the garden, and I went with the traveling man to see the lily pond, and he tried to kiss me, but quite nicely, and it was all so lovely, with the moon and the lilies and everything that I would have liked him to, but I didn't because I knew you wouldn't have liked it. Quite right, said Dermot. But you don't mind, do you? Of course not, said Dermot kindly. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself, but I don't know why you've got to wake me up to tell me about it. Because I have enjoyed myself so much, she added apologetically. I know you don't like me to say so. I don't mind. It just seems to me rather silly. I mean, one can enjoy oneself without having to say so. I can't, said Celia honestly. I have to say so a great deal. Otherwise I'd burst. Well, said Dermot, turning over, you've told me now. And he went to sleep again. Dermot was like that, thought Celia, a little sobered as she undressed. Rather damping, but quite kind. Celia had forgotten all about her promise to show the publisher man her book. To her great surprise, he walked in upon her the following afternoon and reminded her of her promise. She hunted out a bundle of dusty manuscripts from a cupboard in the attic, reiterating her statement that it was very stupid. A fortnight later, she had a letter asking her to come up to town to see him. From behind a very untidy table, strewn with bundles of manuscript, he twinkled at her from behind his glasses. Look here, he said. I understood this was a book. There's only a little more than half of it here. Where's the rest? Have you lost it? Puzzled. Celia took the manuscript from him. Her mouth fell open with dismay. I've given you the wrong one. This is the old one I never finished. Then she explained. He listened attentively, then told her to send him the revised version. He would keep the unfinished one for the moment. A week later, she was summoned again. This time, her friend's eyes were twinkling more than ever. The second edition's no good, he said. You won't find a publisher to look at it. Quite right, too. But your original story is not bad at all. Do you think you could finish it? But it's all wrong. It's full of mistakes. Now look here, my dear child. I'm going to talk to you quite plainly. You're not a heaven-sent genius. I don't think you'll ever write a masterpiece. But what you certainly are is a born storyteller. You think of spiritualism and mediums and Welsh revivalist meetings in a kind of romantic haze. You may be all wrong about them, but you see them as 99% of the reading public who know nothing about them either see them. That 99% won't enjoy reading about carefully acquired facts. They want fiction, which is plausible untruth. It must be plausible. Mind. You'll find it will be the same with your Cornish fisher folk that you told me about. Write your book about them. But, for heaven's sake, don't go near Cornwall or fishermen until you've finished. Then you'll write the kind of grimly realistic stuff that people expect when they read about Cornish fisher folk. You don't want to go there and find out that Cornish fishermen are not a breed by themselves, but something quite closely allied to a Walworth plumber. You'll never write well about anything you really know about, because you've got an honest mind. You can be imaginatively dishonest, but not practically dishonest. You can't write lies about something you know, but you'll be able to tell the most splendid lies about something you don't know. You've got to write about the fabulous, fabulous to you, and not about the real, now. Go away and do it. A year later, Celia's first novel was published. It was called Lonely Harbor. The publishers corrected any glaring inaccuracies. Miriam thought it splendid, and Dermot thought it rather awful. Celia knew that Dermot was right, but she was grateful to her mother. Now, thought Celia, I'm pretending to be a writer. I think it's almost queerer than pretending to be a wife or a mother. Chapter 16. Loss. Miriam was ailing. Every time that Celia saw her mother, her heart had a sudden squeezed feeling. Her mother looked so small and pathetic, and she was so lonely in that big house. Celia wanted her mother to come and live with them, but Miriam refused energetically. It never works. It wouldn't be fair to Dermot. I've asked Dermot. He's quite willing. That is nice of him. But I shouldn't dream of doing it. Young people must be left alone. She spoke vehemently. Celia did not protest. Presently, Miriam said, I've wanted to tell you for some time. I was wrong about Dermot when you married him. I didn't trust him. I didn't think he was honest or loyal. I thought there would be other women. Oh, Mother, Dermot never looks at anything but a golf ball. Miriam smiled. I was wrong. I'm glad. I feel now that when I go, I'm leaving you with someone who will look after you and take care of you. He will? He does. Yes, I'm satisfied. He's very attractive. He is attractive to women. Celia, remember that. He's a frightfully stay-at-home person. Mummy? Yes, that's lucky. And I think he really loves Judy. She is exactly like him. She's not like you. She's Dermot's child. I know. So long as I feel that he will be kind to you. I didn't think so at first. I thought he was cruel, ruthless. He isn't. He's frightfully kind. He was sweet before Judy was born. He's just one of those people who hate to say things. It's all there underneath. He's like a rock. Miriam sighed. I've been jealous. I haven't been willing to recognize his good qualities. I want you so much to be happy. My darling, I am. Mother dear, I am. Yes, I think you are, Celia said after a minute or two. There's really nothing I want in the world, except another baby. Perhaps I'd like a boy as well as a girl. She had expected her mother to be in sympathy with her wish, but a slight frown crossed Miriam's forehead. I don't know that you will be wise. You care for Dermot so much, and children take you away from a man. They are supposed to bring you together. But it isn't so. No, it isn't so. But you and Father, Miriam sighed. It was difficult. Always pulling both ways. It's difficult. But you and Father were perfectly happy. Yes, but I minded. There were heaps of things I minded. Giving up things for the sake of the children annoyed him sometimes. He loved you all. But we were happiest when he and I went away together for a little holiday. Don't ever leave your husband too long alone. Celia, remember, a man forgets. Father would never have looked at anyone but you, her mother answered musingly. No, perhaps he wouldn't, but I was always on the lookout. There was a parlor maid, a big, handsome girl, the type I had often heard your father admire. She was handing him the hammer and some nails. As she did it, she put her hand over his. I saw her. Your father hardly noticed. He just looked surprised. I don't suppose he thought anything of it. Probably imagined it was just an accident. Men are very simple. But I sent that girl away, at once. Just gave her a good reference and said she didn't suit me. Celia was shocked. But father would never, probably not. But I wasn't taking any risks. I've seen so many things. A wife who's in bad health and a governess or companion takes charge. Some young, bright girl. Celia, promise me you'll be very careful what kind of governesses you have for Judy. Celia laughed and kissed her mother. I won't have any fine big girls, she promised. They shall be thin and old and wear glasses. Miriam died when Judy was 8 years old. Celia was abroad at the time. Dermot had got 10 days' leave at Easter, and he had wanted Celia to go to Italy with him. Celia had been a little unwilling to leave England. The doctor had told her that her mother's health was bad. She had a companion who looked after her, and Celia went down to see her every few weeks. Miriam, however, would not hear of Celia's remaining behind and letting Dermot go alone. She came up to London and stayed with Cousin Lottie, a widow now. And Judy and her governess came to stay there also, at Como. Celia got a telegram advising her return. She took the first train available. Dermot wanted to go too, but Celia persuaded him to stay behind and finish his holiday. He needed a change of air and scene. It was as she was sitting in the dining car on her way through France that a curious, cold certainty seemed to invade her body. She thought, of course, I shall never see her again. She's dead. She found on arrival that Miriam had died just about that hour. Her mother, her little gallant mother, lying there so still and strange with flowers and whiteness and a cold, peaceful face, her mother, with her fits of gaiety and depression, her enchanting changeableness of outlook, her steadfast love and protection. Celia thought, I'm alone now. Dermot and Judy were strangers. She thought, there's no one to go to anymore. Panic swept over her, and then remorse. How full her mind had been of Dermot and Judy all these last years. She had thought so little of her mother. Her mother had just been there, always there, at the back of everything. She knew her mother through and through, and her mother knew her. As a tiny child, she had found her mother wonderful and satisfying. And wonderful and satisfying her mother had always remained. And now her mother had gone. The bottom had fallen out of Celia's world. Her little mother. Chapter 17. Disaster. Dermot meant to be kind. He hated trouble and unhappiness, but he wanted to be kind. He wrote from Paris, suggesting Celia should come over and have a day or two to cheer her up. Perhaps it was kindness. Perhaps it was because he funked going home to a house of mourning. That, however, was what he had to do. He arrived at the lodge just before dinner. Celia was lying on her bed. She was awaiting his coming with passionate intensity. The strain of the funeral was over, and she had been anxious not to upset Judy by an atmosphere of grief. Little Judy, so young and cheerful and important over her own affairs. Judy had cried about Grandmama, but had soon forgotten. Children ought to forget. Soon Dermot would be here, and then she could let go. She thought passionately, how wonderful that I've got Dermot. If it weren't for Dermot, I should want to die too. Dermot was nervous. It was sheer nervousness that made him come into the room and say, "Well, how's everybody? Bright and jolly." At another time, Celia would have recognized the cause that made him speak flippantly. Just at the moment, it was as though he had hit her in the face. She shrank back and burst into tears. Dermot apologized and tried to explain. In the end, Celia went to sleep holding his hand, which he withdrew with relief when he saw she was really asleep. He wandered off and joined Judy in the nursery. She waved a cheerful spoon at him. She was drinking a cup of milk. "Hello, Daddy. What shall we play?" Judy wasted no time. "It mustn't be noisy," said Dermot. "Your mother's asleep." Judy nodded comprehendingly. "Let's play Old Maid." They played Old Maid. Life went on as usual, at least not quite as usual. Celia went about as usual. She displayed no outward signs of grief. But all the spring had gone out of her for the time being. She was like a run-down clock. Both Dermot and Judy felt the change, and they didn't like it. Dermot wanted some people to stay a fortnight later, and Celia cried out before she could stop herself. "Oh, not just now. I just can't bear to have to talk to a strange woman all day." But immediately afterwards, she repented and went to Dermot, telling him that she didn't mean to be silly. Of course, he must have his friends. So they came, but the visit wasn't a great success. A few days later, Celia had a letter from Ellie. Its contents surprised and grieved her very much. "My dear Celia," wrote Ellie, "I feel I should like to tell you myself, since you'll probably hear a garbled version, otherwise that Tom has gone off with a girl we met on the boat coming home. It has been a terrible grief and shock to me. We were so happy together, and Tom loved the children. It seems like some terrible dream. I feel absolutely broken-hearted. I don't know what to do. Tom has been such a perfect husband. We never even quarreled." Celia was very upset over her friend's trouble. "What a lot of sad things there are in the world," she said to Dermot. "That husband of hers must be rather a rotter," said Dermot. "You know, Celia, you sometimes seem to think that I'm selfish, but you might have much worse things to put up with. At any rate, I am a good, straight, undeceiving husband, aren't I?" There was something comic in his tone. Celia kissed him and laughed. 3 weeks later, she went home, taking Judy with her. The house had got to be turned out and gone through. It was a task she dreaded, but no one else could do it. Home without her mother's welcoming smile was unthinkable. If only Dermot could have come with her. Dermot himself tried in his own fashion to cheer her up. "You'll enjoy it, really, Celia. You'll find lots of old things you've forgotten all about, and it will be lovely down there this time of year. It will do you good to have a change. Here am I having to grind along in an office every day." Dermot was so inadequate he persistently ignored the significance of emotional stress. He shied away from it like a frightened horse. Celia cried out, angry for once. "You talk as though it was a holiday." He looked away from her. "Well," he said, "so it will be in a way." Celia thought, "He's not kind. He's not—" A great wave of loneliness passed over her. She felt afraid. How cold the world was without her mother. Celia went through a bad time in the next few months. She had lawyers to see, all kinds of business questions to settle. Her mother had, of course, left hardly any money. There was the question of the house to consider, whether to keep it or sell it. It was in a very bad state. There had been no money for repairs. A fairly large sum would have to be spent on it almost immediately if the whole place were not to go to rack and ruin. In any case, it was doubtful if a purchaser would consider it in its present condition. Celia was torn by indecision. She could not bear to part with it. Yet common sense whispered that it was the best thing to do. It was too far from London for her and Dermot to live in it, even if the idea had appealed to Dermot, and Celia was sure it would not appeal to him. The country, to Dermot, meant a first-class golf course, was it not? Then, mere sentiment on her part to insist on clinging to the place, yet she could not bear to give it up. Miriam had made such valiant struggles to keep it for her. It was she herself who had dissuaded her mother from selling it long ago. Miriam had kept it for her and her children. Did Judy care for it as she had done? She thought not. Judy was so aloof, so unattached. She was like Dermot. People like Dermot and Judy lived in places because they were convenient. In the end, Celia asked her daughter. Celia often felt that Judy, at 8 years old, was far more sensible and practical than herself. "Will you get a lot of money for it if you sell it?" "Mummy, no, I'm afraid not. You see, it's an old-fashioned house, and it's right in the country, not near a town." "Well, then, perhaps you'd better keep it," said Judy. "We can come here in the summer." "Are you fond of being here, Judy? Or do you like the lodge best?" "The lodge is very small," said Judy. "I'd like to live in the dormy house. I like big houses." Celia laughed. It was true what Judy had said. She would get very little for the house if she sold it now. Surely, even as a business proposition, it would be better to wait until country houses were less of a drug in the market. She went into the question of the minimum repairs that were absolutely necessary. Perhaps, when they were completed, she could find a tenant for the house furnished. The business side of things had been worrying, but it had kept her mind away from sad thoughts. Now there came the part she had dreaded, the turning out. If the house was to be let, it must first be cleared. Some of the rooms had been locked up for years. There were old trunks, drawers, and cupboards, all crammed with memories of the past. Memories. It was so lonely, so strange in the house. No Miriam. Only trunks full of old clothes, drawers full of letters and photographs. It hurt. It hurt horribly. A japanned box with a stork on it that she had loved as a child. Inside it, folded letters. One from Mummy. "My own precious lamb, pigeony pumpkin." The scalding tears fell down Celia's cheeks. A pink silk evening dress with little rosebuds shoved into a trunk in case it might be renovated and forgotten. One of her first evening dresses. She remembered the last time she had worn it. Such a gauche, eager, idiotic creature. Letters belonging to Granny, a whole trunk full. She must have brought them with her when she came. Photograph of an old gentleman in a bath chair. Always your devoted admirer. And some initials scrawled on it. Granny and the men, always the men, even when they were reduced to bath chairs on the seafront. A mug with a picture of two cats on it that Susan had once given her for a birthday present. Back into the past. Why did it hurt so? Why did it hurt so abominably? If only she wasn't alone in the house. If only Dermot could be with her. But Dermot would say, why not burn the lot without looking through them? So sensible. But somehow she couldn't. She opened more locked drawers, poems, sheets of poems in flowing faded handwriting. Her mother's handwriting as a girl. Celia looked through them. Sentimental. Stilted. Very much of the period. Yes, but something. Some quick turn of thought. Some sudden originality of phrase that made them essentially her mother's. Miriam's mind, that quick, darting, bird-like mind. Poem to John on his birthday, her father, her bearded, jolly father. Here was a daguerreotype of him as a solemn, clean-shaven boy, being young, growing old. How mysterious, how frightening it all was. Was there any particular moment at which you were more you than at any other moment? The future. Where was she? Celia. Going in the future. Well, it was clear enough. Dermot growing a little richer. A large house. Another child. Two. Perhaps illnesses. Childish ailments. Dermot growing a little more difficult. A little more impatient still of anything interfering with what he wanted to do. Judy growing up, vivid, decided, intensely alive. Dermot and Judy together. Herself, rather fatter, faded, treated with just a touch of amused contempt by those two. Mother, you are rather silly, you know. Yes, more difficult to disguise that you were silly as your looks left you. A sudden flash of memory. Don't ever grow less beautiful, will you, Celia? Yes, but that was all over now. They'd lived together long enough for such things as the beauty of a face to have lost its meaning. Dermot was in her blood and she in his. They belonged, essentially strangers. They belonged. She loved him because he was so different. Because though she knew by now exactly how he reacted to things, she did not know and never would know why he reacted as he did. Probably he felt the same about her. No, Dermot accepted things as they were. He never thought about them. It seemed to him a waste of time. Celia thought, it's right. It's absolutely right to marry the person you love. Money and outside things don't count. I should always have been happy with Dermot, even if we'd had to live in a tiny cottage and I'd had to do all the cooking and everything. But Dermot wasn't going to be poor. He was a success. He would go on succeeding. He was that kind of person. His digestion? Of course. That would get worse. He would continue to play golf, and they'd go on and on and on, probably at Dalton Heath or somewhere like it. She'd never see things, faraway things. India, China, Japan, the wilds of Baluchistan, Persia, where the names were like music, Isfahan, Tehran, Shiraz. Little shivers ran over her. If one could be free, quite free, nothing, no belongings, no houses, or husband or children, nothing to hold you and tie you and pull at your heart. Celia thought, I want to run away. Miriam had felt like that. For all her love of her husband and children, she had wanted, sometimes, to get out. Celia opened another drawer. Letters. Letters from her father to her mother. She picked up the top one. It was dated the year before his death. Dearest Miriam, I hope you will soon be able to join me. Mother seems very well and is in good spirits. Her eyesight is failing, but she knits just as many bed socks for her beaux. I had a long talk with Armour about Cyril. He says the boy is not stupid. He is just indifferent. I talked to Cyril too, and I hope made some impression. Try and be with me by Friday. My dearest, our 22nd anniversary. I find it hard to put into words all that you have meant to me. The dearest, most devoted wife any man could have. I am humbly grateful to God for you. My darling, love to our little poppet, your devoted husband, John. Tears came again to Celia's eyes. Someday, she and Dermot would have been married 22 years. Dermot wouldn't write a letter like that. But, deep down, he would perhaps feel the same. Poor Dermot. It had been sad for him, having her so broken and battered this last month. He didn't like unhappiness. Well, once she had got through with this task, she would put grief behind her. Miriam, alive, had never come between her and Dermot. Miriam, dead, must not do so. She and Dermot would go forward together, happy and enjoying things. That was what would please her mother best. She took all her father's letters out of the drawer, and making a pile of them on the hearth, she set a match to them. They belonged to the dead. The one she had read she kept. At the bottom of the drawer was a faded old pocketbook embroidered in gold thread. Inside it was a folded sheet of paper, very old and worn. On it was written, "Poem sent me by Chum on my birthday." Sentiment. The world despised sentiment nowadays, but to Celia, at that moment, it was somehow unbearably sweet. Celia felt ill. The loneliness of the house was getting on her nerves. She wished she had someone to speak to. There were Judy and Miss Hood, but they belonged to such an alien world that being with them brought more strain than relief. Celia was anxious that no shadow should cloud Judy's life. Judy was so vivid, so full of enjoyment of everything. When she was with Judy, Celia made a point of being gay. They had strenuous games together with balls and battledores and shuttlecocks. It was after Judy had gone to bed that the silence of the house wrapped itself round Celia like a pall. It seemed so empty, so empty. It brought back so vividly those happy, cozy evenings spent talking to her mother about Dermot, about Judy, about books and people and ideas. Now, there was no one to talk to. Dermot's letters were infrequent and brief. He had gone round in 72. He had played with Andrews. Rossiter had come down with his niece. He had got Marjorie Connell to make a fourth. They'd played at Hillborough, a rotten course. Women were a nuisance in golf. He hoped Celia was enjoying herself. Would she thank Judy for her letter? Celia began to sleep badly. Scenes came up out of the past and kept her awake. Sometimes she awoke frightened, not knowing what it was that had frightened her. She looked at herself in the glass and knew she looked ill. She wrote to Dermot and begged him to come down for the weekend. He wrote back, "Dear Celia, I've looked up the train service and it really isn't worth it. I'd either have to go back Sunday morning or else land in town about 2 in the morning. The car's not running very well now, and I'm having her overhauled. I know you'll realize that I feel it a bit of a strain working all the week. I feel dog-tired by the weekend and don't want to embark on train journeys. In another 3 weeks, I shall get off for my holiday. I think your idea of Dinard is quite a good one. I'll write about rooms. Don't do too much and overtire yourself. Get out a good deal. You remember Marjorie Connell, rather nice dark girl, niece of the Barretts? She's just lost her job. I may be able to get her one here. She's quite efficient. I took her to a theater one night as she was down on her luck. Take care of yourself and go easy. I think you're right not to sell the house now. Things may improve, and you might get a better price later. I don't see that it's ever going to be much use to us, but if you feel sentimental about it, I don't suppose it would cost much to shut it up with a caretaker, and you might let it furnished. The money you get in from the books would pay the rates and a gardener, and I'll help towards it, if you like. I'm working frightfully hard and come home with a headache most nights. It will be good to get right away. Love to Judy. Your loving, Dermot." The last week, Celia went to the doctor and asked him to give her something to make her sleep. He had known her all her life. He asked her questions, examined her. Then he said, "Can't you get someone to be with you? My husband is coming in a week's time. We are going abroad together." "Ah, excellent." "You know, my dear, you're heading for a breakdown. You're very run down. You've had a shock, and you've been fretting. Very natural. I know how attached you were to your mother. Once you get away with your husband into fresh surroundings, you'll be as right as rain." He patted her on the shoulder, gave her a prescription, and dismissed her. Celia counted the days one by one. When Dermot came, everything would be all right. He was to arrive the day before Judy's birthday. They were to celebrate that, and then they were to start, for Dinard, a new life. Grief and memories left behind. She and Dermot going forward into the future. In 4 days, Dermot would be here. In 3 days. In 2 days. Today, something was wrong. Dermot had come, but it wasn't Dermot. It was a stranger who looked at her. Quick sideways glances and looked away again. Something was the matter. He was ill. In trouble. No. It was different from that. He was a stranger. "Dermot, is anything the matter? What should be the matter?" They were alone together in Celia's bedroom. Celia was doing up Judy's birthday presents with tissue paper and ribbon. Why was she so frightened? Why this sick feeling of terror? His eyes, his queer, shifty eyes, that looked away from her and back again. This wasn't Dermot. Upright, handsome, laughing Dermot. This was a furtive, shrinking person. He looked almost like a criminal. She said suddenly, "Dermot, there isn't anything, with money, I mean. You haven't done anything." "How? Put it into words, Dermot." "Who was the soul of honor, an embezzler?" "Fantastic, fantastic." But that shifty, evasive glance, as though she would care what he had done. He looked surprised. "Money? Oh, no. Money's all right. I am I'm doing very well. She was relieved. I thought it was absurd of me. He said, there is something. I expect you can guess. But she couldn't. If it wasn't money, she had had a fleeting fear. The firm might have failed. She couldn't imagine what it could be. She said, tell me. It wasn't. It couldn't be cancer. Cancer attacked strong people. Young people. Sometimes. Dermot stood up. His voice sounded strange and stiff. Well, it's Marjorie Connell. I've seen a lot of her. I'm very fond of her. Oh, the relief. Not cancer. But Marjorie Connell. Why on earth Marjorie Connell had Dermot? Dermot who never looked at a girl. She said gently, it doesn't matter, Dermot. If you've been rather silly. A flirtation. Dermot wasn't used to flirting. All the same. She was surprised. Surprised and hurt. While she had been so miserable, so longing for Dermot's comfort and presence. He had been flirting with Marjorie Connell. Marjorie was quite a nice girl and rather good-looking. Celia thought Granny wouldn't have been surprised, and the idea flashed through her mind that perhaps Granny had known men rather well. After all, Dermot said violently, you don't understand. It's not at all as you think. There has been nothing. Celia flushed. Of course. I didn't think there had. He went on. I don't know how to make you see. It isn't her fault. She's very distressed about it. About you. Oh, God. He sat down and buried his face in his hands. Celia said wonderingly, you really care for her. I see. Oh, Dermot, I am so sorry. Poor Dermot, overtaken by this passion. He was going to be so unhappy. She mustn't. She simply mustn't be beastly about it. She must help him to get over it, not reproach him. It hadn't been his fault. She hadn't been there. He'd been lonely. It was quite natural. She said again, I'm so dreadfully sorry for you. He got up again. You don't understand. You needn't be sorry for me. I'm a rotter. I feel a cur. I couldn't be decent to you. I shall be no more use to you and Judy. You'd better cut me right out. She stared. You mean, she said, you don't love me any longer. Not at all. But we've been so happy. Always so happy together. Yes, in a way, a quiet way. This is quite different. I think to be quietly happy is the best thing in the world. Dermot made a gesture. She said wonderingly, you want to go away from us? Not to see me and Judy anymore, but you're Judy's father. She loves you. I know. I mind terribly about her. But it's no good. I'm never any use doing anything I don't want to do. I can't behave decently when I'm unhappy. I should be a brute. Celia said slowly, you're going away with her. Of course not. She's not that kind of a girl. I would never suggest such a thing to her. He sounded hurt and offended. I don't understand. You just want to leave us, because I can't be any good to you. I should be simply foul. But we've been so happy. So happy, Dermot said impatiently. Yes, of course, we have, in the past. But we've been married 11 years. After 11 years, one needs a change. She winced. He went on, his voice persuasive, more like himself. I'm making quite a good income. I'd allow you plenty for Judy, and you're making money yourself now. You could go abroad, travel, Do all sorts of things you've always wanted to do. She put up her hand as though he had struck her. I'm sure you'd enjoy it. You'd really be much happier than you would be with me. Stop. After a minute or two, she said quietly, it was on this night, 9 years ago, that Judy began to be born. Do you remember? Doesn't it mean anything to you? Isn't there any difference between me and a mistress you would try to pension off? He said sulkily, I've said I was sorry about Judy, but after all, we both agreed that the other should be perfectly free. Did we when? I'm sure we did. It's the only decent way to regard marriage. Celia said, I think when you've brought a child into the world, it would be more decent to stick to it. Dermot said, all my friends think that the ideal of marriage should be freedom. She laughed. His friends. How extraordinary Dermot was. Only he would have dragged in his friends. She said, you are free. You can leave us if you choose, if you really choose. But won't you wait a little? Won't you be sure there's 11 years' happiness to remember against a month's infatuation? Wait a year. Make sure of things before bursting up everything. I don't want to wait. I don't want the strain of waiting. Suddenly, Celia stretched out and caught at the door handle. All this wasn't real, couldn't be real. She called out, Dermot. The room went black and whirled round her. She found herself lying on the bed. Dermot was standing beside her with a glass of water. He said, I didn't mean to upset you. She stopped herself laughing hysterically, took the water and drank it. I'm all right, she said. It's all right. You must do as you please. You can go away now. I'm all right. You do as you like. But let Judy have her birthday tomorrow. Of course, he said. If you're sure you're all right. He went slowly through the open door into his room and shut it behind him. Judy's birthday tomorrow. 9 years ago, she and Dermot had wandered in the garden, had been parted. She had gone down into pain and fear, and Dermot had suffered, surely. Surely. No one in the world could be so cruel as to choose this day to tell her. Yes, Dermot could. Cruel, cruel, cruel. Her heart cried out passionately. How could he be so cruel to me? See, Judy must have her birthday, presents, special breakfast, picnic, sitting up to dinner, games. Celia thought, there's never been a day so long. So long, I shall go mad. If only Dermot would play up a little more. And Judy noticed nothing. She noticed her presence, her fun, the readiness of everyone to do what she wanted. She was so happy, so unconscious. It tore at Celia's heart. The next day, Dermot left. I'll write from London, shall I? You'll stay here for the present? Not here, no, not here. Here, in the emptiness, the loneliness, without Miriam to comfort her. Oh, mother, mother, come back to me. Mother, oh, mother, if you were here, stay here alone. In this house so full of happy memories, memories of Dermot. She said, I'd rather come home. We'll come home tomorrow. As you please. I'll stay in London. I thought you were so fond of it down here. She didn't answer. Sometimes you couldn't. People either saw or they didn't see. When Dermot had left, she played with Judy. She told her they were not going to France, after all. Judy accepted the pronouncement calmly, without interest. Celia felt terribly ill. Her legs ached. Her head swam. She felt like an old, old woman. The pain in her head increased till she could have screamed. She took aspirin, but it was no use. She felt sick, and the thought of food repelled her. Celia was afraid of two things. She was afraid of going mad, and she was afraid of Judy noticing anything. She didn't know whether Miss Hood noticed anything. Miss Hood was so quiet. It was a comfort to have Miss Hood, so calm and incurious. Miss Hood managed the going home. She seemed to think it quite natural that Celia and Dermot weren't going to France after all. Celia was glad to get back to the lodge. She thought, this is better. I mayn't go mad after all. Her head felt better, but her body worse, as though she had been battered all over. Her legs felt too weak to walk. That and the deathly sickness made her limp and unresisting. She thought, I'm going to be ill. Why does your mind affect your body so? Dermot came down 2 days after her return. It was still not Dermot. Queer and frightening to find a stranger in the body of your husband. It frightened Celia so much that she wanted to scream. Dermot talked stiffly about outside matters. Like someone who's come to call, thought Celia. Then he said, don't you agree that it is the best thing to do? To part. I mean, the best thing for whom? Well, for all of us. I don't think it's the best thing for Judy or me. You know I don't. Dermot said, everybody can't be happy. You mean it's you who are going to be happy, and Judy and I who aren't? I don't see really why it should be you, and not us. Oh, Dermot, can't you go and do what you want to do, and not insist on talking about it? You've got to choose between Marjorie and me. No, that's not it. You're tired of me, and perhaps that's my fault. I ought to have seen it coming. I ought to have tried more. But I was so sure you loved me. I believed in you as I believed in God. That was stupid. Granny would have told me so. No, what you have to choose between is Marjorie and Judy. You do love Judy. She's your own flesh and blood, and I can never be to her what you can be. There's a tie between you two that there isn't between her and me. I love her, but I don't understand her. I don't want you to abandon Judy. I don't want her life maimed. I wouldn't fight for myself, but I will fight for Judy. It's a mean thing to do. To abandon your own child. I believe, if you do it, you won't be happy. Dermot, dear Dermot, won't you try? Won't you give a year out of your life if, at the end of a year, you can't do it? You feel you must go to Marjorie. Well, then you must go. But I'd feel then that you'd tried. Dermot said, I don't want to wait. A year is a long time. Celia gave a discouraged gesture. If only she didn't feel so deathly sick. She said, very well, you've chosen, but if ever you want to come back, you'll find us waiting. And I won't reproach you. Go and be happy, and perhaps you'll come back to us someday. I think you will. I think that underneath everything, it's really me and Judy you love. And I think, too, that underneath you're straight and loyal. Dermot cleared his throat. He looked embarrassed. Celia wished he would go away. All this talking. She loved him so, It was agony to look at him. If only he would go away and do what he wanted to do, not ram the agony of it home to her. "The real point is," said Dermot, "how soon can I get my freedom? You are free. You can go now." "I don't think you understand what I'm talking about. All my friends think there should be a divorce as soon as possible." Celia stared. "I thought you told me there wasn't. There wasn't, well, any grounds for divorce." "Of course there aren't. Marjorie is as straight as a die." A wild desire to laugh passed over Celia. She repressed it. "Well, then," she said, "I'd never suggest anything of that kind to her," said Dermot in a shocked voice. "But I believe that. If I were free, she would marry me." "But you're married to me," said Celia, puzzled. "That's why there must be a divorce. It can all be put through quite easily and quickly. It will be no bother to you, and all the expense will fall on me." "You mean that you and Marjorie are going away together after all? Do you think I'd drag a girl like that through the divorce court? No. The whole thing can be managed quite easily. Her name need never appear." Celia got up. Her eyes blazed. You mean, oh, I think that's disgusting. If I loved a man, I'd go away with him even if it was wrong. I might take a man from his wife. I don't think I would take a man from his child. Still, one never knows. But I'd do it honestly. I'd not skulk in the shadow and let someone else do the dirty work and play safe myself. I think both you and Marjorie are disgusting. Disgusting. If you really loved each other and couldn't live without each other, I would at least respect you. I'd divorce you if you wanted me to, although I think divorce is wrong. But I won't have anything to do with lying and pretending and making a put-up job of it. Nonsense. Everybody does. I don't care. Dermot came up to her. Look here, Celia, I'm going to have a divorce. I won't wait for it, and I won't have Marjorie dragged into it, and you've got to agree to it. Celia looked him full in the face. I won't, she said. Chapter 18. Fear. It was here. Of course, that Dermot made his mistake. If he had appealed to Celia, if he had thrown himself on her mercy, if he had told her that he loved Marjorie and wanted her and couldn't live without her, Celia would have melted and agreed to anything he wanted, no matter how repugnant to her own feelings. Dermot unhappy, she could not have resisted. She had always given him anything he wanted, and she would not have been able to keep from doing so again. She was on the side of Judy against Dermot, but if he had taken her the right way, she would have sacrificed Judy to him, although she would have hated herself for doing so. But Dermot took an entirely different line. He claimed what he wanted as a right and tried to bully her into consenting. She had always been so soft, so malleable, that he was astonished at her resistance. She ate practically nothing. She did not sleep. Her legs felt so weak she would hardly walk. She suffered tortures from neuralgia and earache, but she stood firm, and Dermot tried to bully her into giving her consent. He told her that she was behaving disgracefully, that she was a vulgar, clutching woman, that she ought to be ashamed of herself, that he was ashamed of her. It had no effect. Outwardly, that is, inwardly, his words cut her like wounds. That Dermot could think she was like that. She grew worried about her physical condition. Sometimes she lost the thread of what she was saying, her thoughts. even became confused. She would wake up in the night in a condition of utter terror. She would feel sure that Dermot was poisoning her to get her out of the way. In the daytime, she knew these for the wildest night fancies. But, all the same, she locked up the packet of weed killer that stood in the potting shed. As she did so, she thought, that isn't quite sane. I mustn't go mad. I simply mustn't go mad. She would wake up in the night and wander about the house looking for something. One night, she knew what it was. She was looking for her mother. She must find her mother. She dressed and put on a coat and hat. She took her mother's photograph. She would go to the police station and ask them to trace her mother. Her mother had disappeared, but the police would find her. And once she had found her mother, everything would be all right. She walked for a long time. It was raining and wet. She couldn't remember what she was walking for. Oh, yes, the police station. Where was the police station? Surely in a town, not out in the open country. She turned and walked in the other direction. The police would be kind and helpful. She would give them her mother's name. What was her mother's name? Odd. She couldn't remember. What was her own name? How frightening. She couldn't remember. Sybil. Wasn't it? Or Yvonne? How awful not to be able to remember. She must remember her own name. She stumbled over a ditch. The ditch was full of water. You could drown yourself in water. It would be better to drown yourself than to hang yourself. If you lay down in the water, oh, how cold it was. She couldn't. No, she couldn't. She would find her mother. Her mother would put everything right. She would say, I nearly drowned myself in a ditch. And her mother would say, that would have been very silly. Darling. Silly. Yes, silly. Dermot had thought her silly long ago. He had said so, and his face had reminded her of something. Of course, of the gunman. That was the horror of the gunman. All the time, Dermot had really been the gunman. She felt sick with fear. She must get home. She must hide. The gunman was looking for her. Dermot was stalking her down. She got home at last. It was 2 o'clock. The house was asleep. She crept up the stairs. Horror. The gunman was there, behind that door. She could hear him breathing. Dermot, the gunman. She daren't go back to her room. Dermot wanted to be rid of her. He might come creeping in. She ran wildly up one flight of stairs. Miss Hood, Judy's governess, was there. She burst in. Don't let him find me. Don't let him. Miss Hood was wonderfully kind and reassuring. She took her down to her room and stayed with her. Just as Celia was falling asleep, she said suddenly, How stupid! I couldn't have found my mother. I remember. She's dead. Miss Hood got the doctor in. He was kind and emphatic. Celia was to put herself in Miss Hood's charge. He himself had an interview with Dermot. He told him plainly that Celia was in a very grave condition. He warned him of what might happen unless she was to be left entirely free from worry. Miss Hood played her part very efficiently, as far as possible. She never left Celia and Dermot alone. Celia clung to her. With Miss Hood, she felt safe. She was kind. One day, Dermot came in and stood by the bed. He said, I'm sorry you're ill. It was Dermot who spoke to her, not the stranger. A lump came in her throat. The next day, Miss Hood came in with rather a worried face. Celia said quietly, "He's gone, hasn't he?" Miss Hood nodded. She was relieved that Celia took it so quietly. Celia lay there motionless. She felt no grief, no pang. She was just numb and peaceful. He had gone. Someday she must get up and start life again. With Judy, it was all over. Poor Dermot. She slept. She slept almost continuously for 2 days. And then he came back. It was Dermot who came back, not the stranger. He said he was sorry, that as soon as he had gone, he had been miserable. He said he thought that Celia was right, that he ought to stick to her and Judy. At any rate, he would try. He said, "But you must get well. I can't bear illness or unhappiness. It was partly because you were unhappy this spring that I got to be friends with Marjorie. I wanted someone to play with. I know. I ought to have stayed beautiful, as you always told me." Celia hesitated. Then she said, You do really mean to give it a chance, I mean. I can't stand any more. If you'll honestly try. For 3 months. At the end of it. If you can't, then that's that. But, I'm afraid to go queer again. He said that he'd try for 3 months. He wouldn't even see Marjorie. He said he was sorry. But it didn't stay like that. Miss Hood, Celia knew, was sorry that Dermot had come back. Later, Celia admitted that Miss Hood had been right. It began gradually. Dermot became moody. Celia was sorry for him, but she didn't dare to say anything. Slowly, things went worse and worse. If Celia came into a room, Dermot went out of it. If she spoke to him, he wouldn't answer. He talked only to Miss Hood and Judy. Dermot never spoke to her or looked at her. He took Judy out in the car sometimes. "Is Mummy coming?" Judy would ask. "Yes, if she likes." When Celia was ready, Dermot would say, "Mummy had better drive you. I believe I'm busy." Sometimes Celia would say, "No." She was busy. And then Dermot and Judy would go off, incredibly. Judy noticed nothing, or so Celia thought. But occasionally, Judy said things that surprised her. They had been talking about being kind to Aubrey, who was the adored dog of the house by now. And Judy said suddenly, "You're kind. You're very kind. Daddy's not kind, but he's very, very jolly." And once she said reflectively, "Daddy doesn't like you much," adding with great satisfaction, "But he likes me." One day, Celia spoke to her. "Judy, your father wants to leave us. He thinks he would be happier living with somebody else. Do you think it would be kinder to let him go?" "I don't want him to go," said Judy quickly. "Please, please, Mummy, don't let him go. He's very happy playing with me. And besides, he's my father. He's my father." Such pride, such certainty in those words, Celia thought. Judy or Dermot, I've got to be on one side or the other. And Judy's only a child. I must be on her side. But she thought, I can't stand Dermot's unkindness much longer. I'm losing grip again. I'm getting frightened. Dermot had disappeared again. The stranger was here in Dermot's place. He looked at her with hard, hostile eyes. Horrible when the person you loved most in the world looked at you like that. Celia could have understood infidelity. She couldn't understand the affection of 11 years turning suddenly, overnight as it were, to dislike. Passion might fade and die, but had there never been anything else, she had loved him and lived with him and borne his child, and gone through poverty with him, and he was quite calmly prepared never to see her again. Oh, frightening, horribly frightening. She was the obstacle. If she were dead, he wished her dead. He must wish her dead, otherwise she wouldn't be so afraid. Celia looked in at the nursery door. Judy was sleeping soundly. Celia shut the door noiselessly and came down to the hall and went to the front door. Aubrey hurried out of the drawing room. "Hello," said Aubrey. "A walk at this time of night?" "Well, I don't mind if I do." But his mistress thought otherwise. She took Aubrey's face between her hands and kissed him on the nose. "Stay at home. Good dog. Can't come with Mrs.?" "Can't come with Mrs.? No. Indeed, no one must come where Mrs. was going." She knew now that she couldn't bear any more. She'd got to escape. She felt exhausted after that long scene with Dermot, but she also felt desperate. She must escape. Miss Hood had gone to London to see a sister come home from abroad. Dermot had seized the opportunity to have things out. He admitted at once he'd been seeing Marjorie. He'd promised, but he hadn't been able to keep the promise. None of that mattered. Celia felt, if only he wouldn't begin again, battering at her. But he had. She couldn't remember much now. Cruel, hurting words. Those hostile stranger's eyes. Dermot, whom she loved, hated her, and she couldn't bear it. So this was the easiest way out. She had said, when he had explained, that he was going away, but would come back 2 days later. "You won't find me here." By the flicker in his eyelids, she had felt sure that he knew what she meant. He had said quickly, "Well, of course, if you like to go away." She hadn't answered. Afterwards, when it was all over, he would be able to tell everybody and convince himself that he hadn't understood her meaning. It would be easier for him like that. He had known, and she had seen just that momentary flicker of hope. He hadn't, perhaps, known that himself. He would be shocked to admit such a thing, but it had been there. He did not, of course, prefer that solution. What he would have liked was for her to say that, like him. She would welcome a change. He wanted her to want her freedom too. He wanted, that is, to do what he wanted, and at the same time to feel comfortable about it. He would like her to be happy and contented traveling about abroad so that he could feel, well, it's really been an excellent solution for both of us. He wanted to be happy, and he wanted to feel his conscience quite at ease. He wouldn't accept facts as they were. He wanted things to be as he would like them to be. But death was a solution. It wasn't as though he'd feel himself to blame for it. He would soon persuade himself that Celia had been in a bad way ever since the death of her mother. Dermot was so clever at persuading himself. She played for a minute with the idea that he would be sorry, that he would feel a terrible remorse. She thought for a moment, like a child, when I'm dead, he'll be sorry. But she knew that wasn't so. Once admit to himself that he was in any way responsible for her death, and he would go to pieces. His very salvation would depend on his deceiving himself, and he would deceive himself. No, she was going away, out of it all. She couldn't bear any more. It hurt too much. She no longer thought of Judy. She had got past that. Nothing mattered to her now but her own agony and her longing for escape. The river. Long ago, there had been a river, through a valley, and primroses. Long ago, before anything happened. She had walked rapidly. She came now to the point where the road crossed over the bridge. The river, running swiftly, ran beneath it. There was no one about. She wondered where Peter Maitland was. He was married. He'd married after the war. Peter would have been kind. She would have been happy with Peter. Happy and safe. But she would never have loved him as she loved Dermot. 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 So cruel. The whole world was cruel. Really cruel and treacherous. The river was better. She climbed up on the parapet and jumped. Book 3, The Island, Chapter 1. She was supposed to be the last. The woman didn't knock. She just walked into Celia's flat like she owned a truth no one had earned. Mid-30s. Trench coat damp from rain. Eyes that had seen behind too many curtains. "I'm not press," she said. Celia didn't ask. "I'm not a survivor either," she added. That made Celia look up. "I'm his niece." Her name was Anna, James Larrabee's brother's daughter. She held out a USB stick, encrypted. "Password's your middle name." Celia blinked. "How did you?" Anna shrugged. "My mother was the one he painted nude in the greenhouse. You don't forget the name of the woman he moved on to next." Silence, then quiet steel. "You weren't his last, but you were the first who ever walked out with her eyes open." That night, Celia lit a candle and opened the drive. Files, audio, photos. One folder marked Installations. She clicked. What she saw made her sick. It wasn't just paintings. He'd recorded them. Private viewings. Women drugged. Displayed. Buyers walked through silent rooms like museums. Up. No names. Just numbers. Coded files. Hidden behind corporate shells and gallery fronts. And in one folder titled simply Maria Receipt. Not for a painting. For a sale to a private collector. Dated 2 weeks after Marie's accidental fall. Celia closed the laptop, then picked up the phone. "Inspector Hargreaves." "It's Celia." Pause, then "Tell me." "I was wrong." She said, "This wasn't about one predator with a paintbrush. It's bigger. It's curated." Chapter 2. The Museum of Shadows doesn't sell tickets. They met in a church. Not for God, for silence. Celia slid the USB across the pew like a sacrament. Hargreaves took it without looking. "I've seen worse," she said. "No," Celia said. "You haven't?" 3 days passed. Then the inspector called. One sentence. "The collector in the Marie folder is dead." His name had been Claude Rennert. Dutch passport. Billionaire facade. Art syndicate ties. They found him in his penthouse. Neck snapped. Wine untouched. One of Larrabee's portraits on the wall burned from the inside out. Frame intact. A message scrawled across the canvas in red. "No more auctions." "Asantes." "This wasn't you?" Hargreaves asked. Celia stared at the photos. "No," she said, "but someone wants to finish the gallery their way." They traced Rennert's purchase history. 4 paintings. All off catalog, each signed with Larrabee's initials, but digitally ghosted. No paper trail, no provenance. Only one common thread: the gallery's shipping partner, Argo Logistics. Clean company. Too clean. Celia insisted on going with the inspector. She needed to see it. They reached the warehouse on a Thursday. A storm sat on the horizon like a warning. Inside, steel shelves rose like mausoleums. Paintings, sculptures, crates, silent screams in lacquer and canvas. Then Hargreaves said, "There, a crate, unmarked. Boom. Well, inside a painting of Celia, not the one she'd burned. A new one. Her mouth was covered, eyes wide, arms pinned behind her. Title scrawled on the back, Study in Obedience. Celia II, date 2 weeks ago, but he's gone. Celia whispered, maybe not. Or maybe someone's keeping his vision alive. That night, Celia didn't sleep. She stared at the shadow in her mirror, the one that always lingered behind her eyes. Larrabee had wanted to immortalize her. Now someone was trying to finish his work. But they'd forgotten one thing. She wasn't a portrait anymore. She was the brush, and she was going to paint them into a corner they'd never leave. Chapter 3. Canvas can't bleed, but collectors can. The list wasn't long. Just 4 names, 4 buyers, each one linked to Study in Obedience, Celia II. Each one with blood money disguised as endowments. Cultural philanthropy. Anonymous art donations. The first was easy. Harold Linton, tech magnate, patron of the avant-garde, also quiet shareholder in Argo Logistics. He lived in a steel and glass house above Knightsbridge, the kind of place designed to look invisible. The kind of man who made women feel the same. Celia didn't ask for a warrant. She didn't bring Hargreaves. She brought a wine bottle and a velvet folder and a face Harold hadn't seen in years. "Do I know you?" he asked. "No," she said. "But you paid for me." She placed the folder on the table. Inside, printed stills from Larrabee's installation tapes. Blurry, but clear enough. One woman. Several rooms. Linton watching from a 2-way mirror. He stared, then smiled. "I always wondered when this would come around," he said. Celia didn't flinch. "Who's continuing it?" she asked. Linton poured himself a drink. "Doesn't matter," he said. "You're here. That's what counts." When she left, he was still breathing. Barely, but the portrait she left behind would last longer. A snapshot of him, eyes swollen shut, mouth smeared with his own vintage. She sent it to Hargreaves with the caption, "1 down, 3 watching." The second name lit up that night. Vivienne Marchand, French gallerist, known for collecting post-trauma realism. She'd posted an image, a teaser, coming soon. The muse reclaimed. The woman in the painting, Celia, but not Celia, a manipulated version, darkened skin, hollowed cheeks, rope necklace, and a signature in the bottom right corner. J. Except it wasn't Larrabee's hand. The stroke was off, the slant too sharp. A forger, or worse, a successor, someone trying to recreate the master's work. Celia called Hargreaves. "She's displaying it next Thursday," she said. "I'll pull the exhibition license." "No," Celia said. "Let it hang." There was something she needed to see. Who else came to admire pain? Because if Larrabee wasn't painting anymore, someone was, and they knew exactly what Celia used to look like when she cried. Chapter 4. The eyes in the gallery followed her home. The gallery was lit like a crime scene, pretending to be a cathedral. Spotlights angled just so. Shadows cast intentionally. Every piece curated for discomfort. Celia walked in alone. She wore black, not mourning, but armor. Vivienne Marchand spotted her instantly. came floating over like smoke and silk. "You came," she said in that accent that turned cruelty into charm. "I'm the centerpiece," Celia replied. "Would be rude not to." They stood before the painting. The muse reclaimed. It looked like her, and it didn't. It was distorted, violated. Her mouth was stitched shut with gold thread, her hands framed in rusted cuffs. "I never sat for this," Celia said. Vivienne smiled. "Art is interpretation." "No," Celia said. "This is memory." And memory means someone watched. Then she noticed it, bottom corner. Beneath the fake Larrabee signature, barely, scratched into the pigment. Like a whisper. Study 2 of 9. 9. There were 9 of them. And this was only number 2. Celia turned. The gallery was filling. Collectors, critics, people in sharp clothes with dull eyes, and in the far back, someone she recognized from a mirror that had watched too long. Anna, Larrabee's niece. But she wasn't alone. A man stood next to her, tall, pale, wearing gloves indoors, and Celia saw it instantly. He wasn't a buyer. He was a curator. Vivienne leaned close. "There are 2 kinds of women," she whispered. "The kind who hang, and the kind who get framed." Celia met her eyes. "Funny, I was just thinking the same thing." That night, Celia didn't go home. She followed Anna, waited until the man peeled off on foot near the river. She tracked him through fog and alley. He moved like someone who knew he was being watched. Then suddenly he stopped, turned, and said her name. Not miss, not ma'am, but her name. Celia, voice smooth as varnish. "You're not supposed to be this active." She didn't blink. "You're not supposed to be alive," she said. He smiled. "That's the trouble with art. You can't kill the idea once someone's seen it." Then he vanished into the fog like a dropped brushstroke. Go. Back in her flat, Celia poured herself one drink. Just one. Then she pinned the gallery pamphlet to the wall, drew a circle around study 2 of 9. 8 more. She was done being anyone's muse. It was her turn to paint, and this time, the frame would close on them. Pseudonym, Chapter 5. 9 Studies in Blood and Varnish. The next morning, Celia didn't drink. She drew, not with paint, with names, faces, galleries, shipments, shadow buyers. 9 studies, 9 crimes behind glass. Isaat. And somewhere in those brushstrokes, her own dismembered identity. She called Hargreaves. "I need access to Interpol's art fraud database." Silence. "You're not a cop," the inspector said. "No," Celia replied. "But I am the evidence." The inspector didn't ask questions. She just opened the gate. Study 1 found. Study 2. The muse reclaimed. Study 3. In transit. An anonymous bid from Dubai. Study 4. Lost in a customs fire. No accident. Study 5 unconfirmed. Study 6. Purchased under a dead name. Study 7 leased to a private viewing room in Vienna. Study 8 missing. Study 9 untitled. No image, no description, no location, just a label final draft. Celia stared at the screen. Final draft. The last revision. The completed lie. Whoever painted that one thought they understood her completely. That's when it stopped being about survival and became about ownership. She called Anna. "Why didn't you tell me there were 9? "I didn't know." Anna said, "I only saw the one in Rennert's vault." He called it Ghost of the Muse. "Who painted them?" "Not Larrabee," Anna whispered. "But someone who worked beside him. Studio assistant." "No. Someone he trained." Celia felt it click in her spine. She hadn't survived a man. She'd survived a legacy. That night, Another image was posted to an invite-only gallery in Milan. Study 3. A woman, bound in silver wire. Face turned to the wall. Shadow in the shape of a man with a brush. Titled, The Unwilling Composition. Underneath private auction. One night only. Celia booked a flight before the ink dried. She packed no clothes. Just one thing. The knife she'd kept since the first night she ran. It wasn't for self-defense. It was for cutting canvas. Chapter 6. The Unwilling Composition. The gallery in Milan was underground. Not metaphorically. A literal vault beneath a defunct bank, turned private showcase for those who could afford art that shouldn't exist. Celia walked in under a stolen name. Hairpinned, eyes dead, smile practiced. The room smelled of wine, wealth, and unspoken threats. There were no titles on the walls, just numbers, QR codes, and silent nods between men in tailored shadows. She found study 3 near the back. The painting was taller than she expected. The figure bound, faceless, was suspended mid-motion, as if trying to escape the canvas itself. But what chilled her wasn't the subject. It was the brushstroke, sharp, intentional, cruel. Someone whispered beside her, "She's very emotive." No, Celia didn't look. "Who painted it?" she asked. "Ah," the man said. "The artist has no face. Only the muse matters." She turned then and met the curator, the same man from the fog. White gloves, thin mouth, unscarred conscience. He didn't flinch. "Welcome to your legacy," he said. "Shall I show you the final draft?" Back room, dim light, red velvet curtain. She stepped through and froze. It wasn't a painting. It was a mirror. See, but the glass wasn't clean. It was treated aged, distorted, and carved across its surface. Faint, but deliberate, were her features. Etched. Painted, buried under layers of resin and shame. At the bottom, scratched like a signature. Final draft. Property of the gallery. "It's not for sale," he said behind her. "No," she whispered. "Some works are meant to stay." She turned, knife already in hand. His smile didn't falter. "But we both know," he said, "it's not finished until it bleeds." The fight wasn't cinematic. It was fast, ugly, real. Blood bloomed like pigment across the white gallery floor. But she didn't kill him. Not yet. She dragged him to the mirror, made him look. "Do you see me?" He spat blood. "You're just a subject." She leaned close. "No," she whispered. "I'm the artist now." And then she sliced through the mirror, not with the blade, but with herself. A shoulder first, then fist. Glass exploded like applause when they pulled her from the gallery. She was laughing, bloodied, burned. But visible, no longer framed. Back in London, Hargreaves read the headlines. "Woman destroys 2M. Private collection in Milan. Underground art scandal. No charges filed. No names released." Just a photo, a blurry one, of Celia walking away from the broken frame. Chapter 7. All the paintings are gone, but she still sees them. Celia came back to London with no luggage, just scars, and one photograph folded in her coat pocket. The shattered mirror, her reflection, fragmented. Exactly how she felt. She hadn't slept in 2 nights. When she closed her eyes, she saw the women from the other paintings, not posed, not composed, but watching her, silent, waiting. At 4:06, she called Hargreaves. The inspector answered on the second ring. "I can't stop seeing them," Celia said. "The paintings, no. The women. I think some of them were alive when he painted them. Silence. Then Hargreaves said, "You're not wrong." The inspector had been digging. Quietly, she'd cross-referenced the women from the tapes with missing persons reports. 6 matches, names buried under aliases, disappearances no one followed up on because someone paid to forget. It's a pattern, Hargreaves said. A project. Each painting corresponds to a phase of what Celia asked. Control, resistance, collapse, Celia whispered. And finality. She started drawing again, not for galleries, for herself. Each sketch an attempt to remember what was taken and maybe give it back. 1 sketch per victim, and on the 7th night, her pencil froze. She recognized the face, not from the gallery, not from the tapes, from the train. 2 months earlier, rain, a woman beside her. Nervous, black gloves, shallow breathing. They didn't speak, but now Celia knew. That woman had been study 5. She called Anna. I think one of them's alive. Who? I don't know her name, but I know her fear. That night, she received an email. No subject, no text, just an image attachment. A new painting. Rough, wet, rushed, but unmistakable. Study 8. A woman holding a burning canvas. Standing over a body, the face in the flames. Celia's. The caption underneath read, "She thinks she's free." The painting hadn't been shown yet. Hadn't even dried, which meant it was local. Someone was watching her, studying her, and planning the next exhibit. She didn't sleep. She painted a self-portrait. Not pretty, not framed, just true. Title, The Last Witness. She pinned it to the wall, then loaded the knife into her coat again. If someone wanted to paint her death, they'd have to finish it while she was still breathing. Chapter 8. She was the subject. Now she's the signature. By morning, Celia had already chosen the gallery. Not one of theirs. Hers, an abandoned print shop in East London. Dust-covered etching plates. Mold on the walls. Perfect. She would host her own exhibition. One the collectors wouldn't see coming. She reached out to Anna. "Leak it," Celia said. "Leak what?" "A private show. 1 night. Reclamation in 9 movements, so. You think they'll bite? They won't just bite." Celia said, "They'll bleed." They did. Within hours, encrypted messages were bouncing across the dark gallery circuits. Anonymous RSVPs. Private jets booked. 1 invitation returned with a single word scribbled in red. Signed, "She borrowed from the shadows, lighting rigs from a forgotten theater, framing tools from the ruins of Larrabee's studio." And the canvases empty, each one numbered 1 through 9. Blank, waiting. At 9 Shisuru, Pier Sim. They arrived. Soft shoes, louder egos. Altis. Men who never showed their faces, only their money. Women with smiles like razors. They came for blood, dressed as art. Celia stood in front of them. No mask. No whine. No apology. "This is a participatory piece," she said. "You're all part of it." A low chuckle rolled through the crowd. "Where's the work?" someone asked. Celia smiled. "You brought it." The doors slammed shut. Locks turned. Cameras activated. Each guest faced a canvas with a number. Each canvas corresponded to one of the 9 studies. Their purchases, their secrets. "Some words." One man turned. "You're bluffing." Celia lifted a projector remote, pressed play. The walls filled with footage, study after study, the original process, the models, the restraints the laughter behind the lens. Then their names, one by one, matched to times, to bids, to locations. No deniability left. Okay-san. You think this will hold up in court? One hista. Celia stepped forward. I'm not here for court. She unpinned her self-portrait from behind a curtain, held it high, a woman in flames, holding her own leash. The signature at the bottom, not Larrabee, not Muse, just Celia. Then she lit it. The portrait, the tapes, the canvases, all of it. Fire bloomed like catharsis. The guests screamed, pushed toward the doors. But Celia just watched, eyes reflecting the inferno. Outside, Hargreaves waited. Police nearby. Silent. Did she come out? One officer asked. No, Hargreaves said. She was never inside. By morning, the building was gone, but the story wasn't. No arrests, no suspects, just a legend. A woman burned the past to paint her freedom. And somewhere far away, someone opened a fresh canvas, signed it with a C, and whispered, "No more unfinished portraits." Chapter 9. The Girl in the Frame. Blinks back. A month passed. No headlines, no charges, no gallery dared speak her name. But in corners of the art world, whispers bloomed. Collectors reported lost inventory. Paintings vanished mid-shipment. Canvas frames returned empty. But with one thing left behind, a signature. See? Sometimes scratched. Sometimes burned. Always unmistakable. In Lisbon. A buyer unwrapped what he thought was study 5. Found only a mirror, fractured, with a line of text written in ash. Do you see her now? Anna called from Prague. You're building a myth, she said. No, Celia replied. I'm erasing one. She no longer ran. She moved. Cities became canvases. Each destination a new layer of herself. Oh, and in every city, she found something strange. Women watching her. Not followers, not fans. Survivors. They recognized her. Not her name, not her face, her defiance. In Berlin, one handed her a flash drive. No words, just a nod. Inside were photos. From a vault, 10 new canvases, all unsigned. But the women were real and alive. Some scared, some sedated, some staring straight at the painter. And one looking directly at the camera. Her mouth moved. Frame by frame, Celia zoomed in until it was clear. One word, help. Celia didn't sleep that night. Didn't draw. She wrote one sentence in her notebook. Underlined it twice. Doras. He taught others. The fire hadn't ended the project. It had only ended one chapter. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was rescue, reclamation, correction. And somewhere, someone else was watching her move. Collecting the myth, curating her every step. Because when the muse escapes the frame, she becomes the artist, but also the subject again. Chapter 10. The last portrait was never hung. Celia arrived in Odessa at dawn. Cold wind, gray sea, no welcome. Perfect. A woman met her at the docks. No names exchanged. Just a slip of paper with a gallery address and one line. They're still painting. The gallery was beneath an old opera house. No signs, no guests, just echoes. Inside, long corridors. Echoes of breathing that didn't come from her. She followed the scent of turpentine and varnish. It led her to a door with no handle, just a fingerprint scanner. She didn't hesitate. Inside was not a gallery. It was a lab. Easels in rows, canvases half-formed, women posing not by choice. Some stood, some were strapped, some had already been painted. Each canvas hung beneath a number, not 19 anymore. Now they read Series 2. She walked among them like a ghost, then froze. Canvas 12, a figure she knew, not from the paintings, from her dreams. It was her mother, not accurate, but remembered, weaponized. Footsteps behind her. She turned. He was older now. Gray hair, clean hands. Same eyes. Larrabee. No aliases. No proxy. The master returned for the final brushstroke. You were never meant to survive. He said, no. She replied, you were never meant to be remembered. They didn't speak again. The fight was quiet. Controlled. He tried to reach for the brush. She reached for the scalpel. One of them was an artist. The other had learned, when it was over, she didn't kill him. She posed him, chained to the easel, blank canvas before him. A sign around his neck. Try to paint me now. She freed the women. Not all walked. Some wept. Some screamed. One just hugged her and said, thank you for seeing me. Outside, the world continued. No sirens, no gallery headlines. But the underground knew. The portrait pipeline was burned. From inside, Celia never showed her face again. But her art did, in alleys, in empty frames. In blank canvases hung where masterpieces used to be, each one signed with C, and the phrase, this space belonged to someone. The last portrait. It wasn't painted, it was lived. By every woman who'd once been a subject and now refused to stand still.